Good afternoon, and today I'll be telling about the Apex expressions and the operators that are used for our programming. So, firstly, the expressions are, as we have already studied in the different programming languages, are that expressions are made up of multiple variables, operators, methods, invocations, and that is forming a single value. That is referred as the expression. So, in Apex, we have a different type of expression, and in which one of the different type of expression is the literal expression. So, a literal expression like 1 plus 1 is a literal expression here in Apex language. We can also create a new as object. So, Apex object list or a set of maps or the collections, all these are included inside a particular one expression. So, here I have taken example where a new account is being formed and a new account is object is created and I have specified a field needs to be initialized for it. Then I have taken a new integer for the new value, new line. Then again I am assigning the elements in the new account method array, and the list is created of account, and then I am setting the value of that particular account as string value. Then the mapping is done between the string value and the integer value, which I have already declared earlier. Now this is specified in a renaming class, or the class whatever name you want to give to the class. Then you have the old name of that particular value of that class, and then the new name also for that particular class or the list or the account. Then any of the value that is placed inside the parenthesis is specified as the field. So we have the different assignment operators that are also referred as the L values, that is the literal values, the one dimensional list positions, and S object or apex object field references. So here next example that I have taken is the integer I is specified. Then I have taken the size of the list as 3 and the name of the list is my list. Then I have called the my contact dot name. Then again I want only the old name of the class, so it has directly called dot old name. Now, any S object field reference that is not specified earlier in the literal value are the ID that needs not to be explained before the uh, execution of the program. So an object is created, object field is created, then what all things we do not want to specify in the L value, that is the ID of the object that is created in the list. Then you have the different child records that are, because with the object we can have multiple other child accounts or the different contacts associated with it. Then you will get the result, and the result which I get is very much similar to the SQL. So they are like SOQL and SOSL queries. So these type of queries are already placed inside the square brackets. So we have the account name, that is I've specified the size also, then the account name AA, then I have to select ID, then name. This is similar to the SQL query. So I have to get the name from the account list that I have created where the name is Ekme. Then you have your integer value. So you have to select the count of the contact. So you will select the count of the contact where condition is where clause is applied, where last name is specified as Westman. Now here I have a list, and the list of objects are there. So we have different S objects, then the search list is there for those S objects, and then I have to find the map in all the fields that is having the account ID and the name. Then we have the different contacts and the opportunity lead also, that can be specified with the help of this creation of the S objects. We can have a static or an instance method invocation. We can have the system.assert true. Then you can call the different methods with the renaming class, and then you can also specify the x-axis and the y-axis or the point or the Cartesian product for a particular value. Then the different expression operators that we are using in our Apex language are they are also referred as the compound expressions. So I have listed some of the expressions, but there are many more expressions to it. So equal to sign, as we have already used earlier, that is an assignment operator. So the value of x and the y is assigned. These they are equal or they are matching each other, and these values can never be declared as the null value. Then we have the plus equal to. So when you are adding certain value to a particular operator, that is treating as a assignment addition assignment operator. This is also a right associative value. So now this value can also be can't be declared as a null value. We can assign, if we have a certain value that is given to the x operator, then we can assign a new value also to the x operator by adding certain values. The plus is for additional information. Then we have the similar value into equals to. So here this is referred as the multiplication assignment operator. So it will be multiplying the value of the y and to that the original value that is provided with the x value. Then you will have you can get the value either in the integer format or in the double format. These value can also not be declared as null. Then you have minus equal to, that is subtraction assignment operator. So this also is assigning a new value to the x value by subtracting the value of y. Then you have division assignment operator, that is dividing the original value of x with the value of y, and then we are getting a new value to the x value. Then we have or equal to. So we have or assignment operator. This will take a boolean value. So both the values, that is x and y, are declared as the boolean value, and then both the values are true. Then if both the values are true, then it will be true, and if both the values are false, then x will be remaining as the false. Otherwise x is assigned the value of true. This value also cannot be declared as null. Then we have and equals to. So this is then and assignment operator. Here also x is a boolean variable and y is a boolean variable, and then both are declared as true when x is declared as true. Then we have left assignment operator, shift bitwise shift. So it will be shifting every bit in the x to the left of the x by y bits. So these are the different assignment operators or the bitwise shift left assignment operators. Then we have bitwise shift right signed assignment operator. So this will shift every bit in X to the right of Y bits. Now we have the bitwise shift right unsigned assignment operator. This will shift each bit in X to the right of by the Y bits. This value is now a reassigned value to X. Then we have the ternary operator. So the ternary operator is used to provide the if then else statements. So if X is a boolean value, then it is true, then Y is a result. Otherwise, Z is the answer. Then X double and logical operator Y. So if X is a boolean value and Y is also a boolean value, so if both are true, then the expression, the result will also be a true value. Otherwise, if any of the value is false, then we will get a false value. We have different examples for this. So this example will first evaluate a value A and then return a value null if A is a null. Otherwise, the value will be A dot B result. So we have different ternary operators. So it will get the value A equals to null and null value will be assigned to A dot B. So we have different example, that is AX is evaluating to null. If AX is not evaluating to null, then a different method will be returning a null value, and then the expression which is defined will throw a null pointer exception. So here the example is AX ternary operator, A method, then dot A field. This will definitely evaluate to a null value if AX is declared as the null. Then we have the example of AX method where it is evaluating to null. So AX dot A method, and then we are getting a field. Then we have an example that is indicating the type of expression, that is whether the safe navigation operator is used in the expression or not. So we have the integer X, an object, and then an integer field. Then the expression here defined as the data type is defined as the integer type. So next, we have the example that is showing us the single statement replacing a block of code that will check the value for the nulls. Then in the we have already checked in the previous code for the value of nulls. So now we are providing the profile value, that is the profile URL is provided and this is assigned as the null value. So if the URL profile user is not equal to null, then you will get the user profile and that will be generated to the external format and it will be stored in the form. Then you have to check for the safe navigation operator. So you are providing the profile value, that is profile URL is provided to you, and then you are getting the user profile when the value of the profile URL is not null, then you are performing and getting the user profile URL. Now you will have a single row SOQL query which is showing us the safe navigation operator. So the results are stored when you are using the SOQL query. So from here you are selecting name from the account list where the ID is declared as the account ID, and then if there is no value in the account ID, then the size of that particular result will be evaluated to 0. So if it means it is not storing any of the value, so that account will be deleted and you will get the null value for that particular value that you are asking for. Now the result will be generated, the names will be shown for that. Then you you will be getting the value of the name of the account that has the safe navigation operator. Now you cannot use the safe navigation operator everywhere in the system. So there are certain cases where you have to where you cannot use the safe navigation operator because it will give the error message. So where there are multiple ways, that is the types and the static expression, the namespaces, the class, the trigger, the interview, the flow name, the type of the class, the static variable access method and the expression. There at those places you cannot use the safe navigation. You can just simply call any static method, any static variable, any format with the help of this the class you have created. You can also get the page name, and you can also assign the values to the expressions. Then we have the SOQL bind expressions. So here we have a class X where we have declared the query as the public query and a string value is assigned to it. Then you will get a new value of X. Then these values will be provided from the list account. So in the list we can have multiple values, and then from there I am selecting the name of the query or the account name from the account list. Now we can also get the value from the S object where you will find all the query in all the fields. Here you will return the account name. Then if any error message is formed, is if there are you are applying any safe navigation query, then an error message is applied. So you need to add an error method to the objects that are declared as the scalar field that are having the scalar fields. So you are having contact C, then you are getting the last name, and then you are getting the add error. So the field should always have a value before getting a error. So this error message will be displayed that the field must have a value. Then we have different operator precedence. So we have to follow certain orders of the operator as the rules. We have the different operator precedent rules. So these are the precedent operators descriptions. Then we have the precedence operators, that is the curly braces, the uh, addition, the multiplication, the shift operators, the instance of operators, the comparison operators, the bitwise and operators, the bitwise or operators, then bitwise or operators. We have different operators that are stored in our operators precedence. The list is already displayed to you. These are the precedence of the operators: bitwise and, bitwise bitwise or, logical and. The last one are the operators, assignment operators in the operator precedence. Then we have the assignment statements. The assignment statement is any statement that is assigning a value into a variable, and it will be generated into two different ways. First is the L value, and you can assign a new value expression. Second, when you have to apply the SOQL query to the L value, that is the literal value. So you, in both the way, you can specify the L value for any expression, and that value will be placed on the left side of any assignment operator. So the examples here are a simple variable. When I am using a simple variable, then I am declaring it here integer I is equals to 1, then I have account name, then new account A is created, then after that I am selecting the ID from the account list that was already represented, then I have to dereference the list element. For that you have to provide the ints value, that is 0, the place value is provided and the value is 1. Then we have the name of that particular accounts that are having the null values. Then we can have the S object field reference, that is having the context user has the permissions to edit the value. So you can have a new that is account that is with the name A, and then you are getting the name of that particular account is Acme. Then you are storing the building city also, the San Francisco. The IDs are not needed to be inserted. Then after that AID is there, then you can also insert the new record also, you can insert the fields also, you can create a date, you can create a date that is read only date, then you have a account name that is being inserted. Now you can change the name of the account, or you can add a new contact, you can create a new contact. Then in creating the new contact, that will be created inside the account list. So the new contact is containing the last name as well as the account for which you are associating the contact. Now you need to write down the account name, and then you can directly get the name of that particular contact with which the account is associated, that is c.account.name is equals to salesforce.com. Assignment is done for the reference. So here example is account A is new account, then account B, then account C is also a new account. See, there is a difference for declaration. So assign account A is created, then account B, then a list of account C is created, a new account. And then we can directly access the name of that particular account by name, and then we can change the value of B to, we can assign the value of B to A. Then simply I can add this to the C account list, and this will now be generated, and these values can be referred and the data can be easily accessed. Now we have an account that was initially allocated to A, then it is linked to B, and then it is saved in the account list C. So all these values are assigned to each other. All these accounts are interrelated to each other. So we are using the command that is system dot assert equals b dot name is Acme. Then system dot assert equals c dot name is also Acme. That name Acme was assigned to A because A, B and C are interrelated. So now everywhere the name will be Acme. Then we have two lists that are pointing to a same value in the memory. We have a new account A, and then I am saving that value into account B list, and then I am assessing the same value and getting the name as Acme. Then again here I am using the same method, that is system dot method is called system dot assert. Then B name is also assigned as Acme. Then there are certain rules of conversion. So we have different rules Now, Apex language is always used to convert explicitly from then one data type to another data type. So we have a variable of integer data type and we cannot implicitly convert it to string. So you need to use the string dot format method for converting it to the integer to string value. Now there are certain data types that can be easily converted and implicitly converted without using this particular method. Then you have a numeric type of values that can be always assigned to a higher type of values. Now we have the hierarchy for the numbers, that is the integer, then long, then double, then decimal. Now the hierarchy that is there is implicit conversion. It is not like Java hierarchy of numbers, because in Java the base interface number is used to implicitly conversion of the object, and here it is not allowed. So in addition to the different numeric values, the other data types can also be implicitly converted. So the rules that can be applied are the IDs can always be converted to string values. Means they are already assigned as string values. Now this assigned values, string values, at any runtime the value is checked, and then if ID is not an erroneous ID, then it is a legitimate ID, it is a correct ID, then you can easily assign a value and the value is being checked. If we have an invalid ID, then the exception is thrown. Then we use the keyword instance of, that is used to test whether a string is an ID or not. Now we have the different additional consideration for data types. We have the data types of numeric values. The numeric values can be integer values. They can be changed to the long value. They can be changed for the double value, or they can be converted to the decimal value. So the expression long D123, it is declaring a long variable that is named as D, and where the value is assigned as 123. Now you can easily convert it to a different numerical values, like the integer value, from long to integer, from long to decimal, from long to double. So every type of conversion is possible here with this type of value. So example, this D is equals to 2147483648L. Then we have overflow of data type values. We have the different arithmetic computations that are producing the larger values than the maximum values of the current type. So when this type of thing happen, then it is said this situation is called as the overflow condition. So for this, if I have given an integer I value as this, so it will either give a minus value, because the maximum value for this, the assigned integer value, is not equal to this 47. So we are getting the values 2147483647, because that is the maximum value that can be taken by an integer type of data type. But here we are adding a 1 to it, so either it will be taking a negative number, or it will be taking only the number till 47. So this is the overflow condition, where you are assigning the range of the particular data type that is more than the range provided. Then we have the incorrect result, because the product of the integers will also be greater than the maximum value an integer can take in the next example. So this is also an overflow condition. So the final product will not be acceptable and it will give an error. So we can also get the million values by using the long keyword or the long data type. With the long data type, there are less chances of overflow of data type values. Now we have loss of fractions in division. When we are dividing any numeric integer or long variables, the long values are the then the any fractional position or the portion of the result can be easily converted to a double or a decimal. So it will return 1 because now I am taking an integer value. So all the values that are after point will be eliminated and it will be rounding out to 1. So you can easily convert it to double also. So there is a loss of fraction when you are converting any of the decimal value data type to the integer type of data type value or to the long type of data type. Now we have the different loops which we have used, that is the conditional if else statement. The conditional statement in Apex is very much similar to the Java. So the if condition is the syntax for the if condition is if boolean condition, then statement when, else statement 2. So the else part is an optional part if you are using with the if statement. If x is less than or equal to 0, then sign is 0, else the sign will be -1. So integer x sign is always provided in the minus or plus. So if the x value is less than equal to 0, then it will be a minus. But if x is equal to 0, then it is neither positive neither negative, else you have the sign as -1. Then we have the repeated else if statements. That is also acceptable in Apex language. So if place equals to 1, then you are getting the medal as gold. Else if place is 2, then medal is silver. Else the third place, then the medal is bronze. And if these three conditions are dissatisfied, then you are not getting any medal, then that value is null. Then we have the different switch statements. The switch statement are also supported by the Apex languages. Now the syntax for this switch statement is switch on expressions when value, then when block 1, code block 1, then when value 2, when block 2, then code block 2, when value 3, when block 3 and code block 3, else there will be a default block or the default condition is there where you are storing the value in code block 4. So you can have a single value also, you can have a multiple values also, you can also have include the S object type also with the help of this switch case statements. So when value 1, then when value 2, 3, then when value type name, variable name can also be provided in the switch expression. The switch statement can take any of these types of data types, that is the integer type of data type, the long type, the object type, the string type and the enum type. We have one different type of blocks here, that is the when blocks, which we have not studied earlier. So when block is already storing a value that is an expression value that is matching against each other. So these value will take either of the following forms. So when literal, a block can have multiple comma separated literal clauses, and then we have the S object identifier type, then we have the enum value. The null value is a legal value for all the types of all these types that are supported with the help of the apex switch statement. Then we have when else block. So if no value is matching the expression, then the when else block is executed. So if you are having a when else block, then the last block in the switch statement should always be a when else block. So here when we are taking the example with the literals, so I want that the when values for switching on integer, long and string type, then these values are case sensitive. For example, if I am taking a value orange, that is different, small letters are different from the capital letters of orange. So we want to take a single value example. So switch on I when value is 2, then I am debugging it. System.debug when block 2 is true. When -3, that is system.debug when block is -3. When else, the system.debug is default. Then we have the null value example. All the types that are supported with the apex are nullable. So when value can also be a null value. So switch on I is either it is 2 when a block 2 is successfully executed, otherwise the null value is there and it will give our answer bad integer. Otherwise, if these two values are not there, then it will finally give the default value. Then we have multiple values examples. So we have the different apex switch statement, but there when there is a when clause, you can have multiple literal values that are matching against each other. You can also use the nested switch statement to have multiple execution with the help of the when clause. So switch on I have taken three values 2, 3 and 4, and then when block 2, 3 and 4 are there, then we can move on to block 5, 6, and then when it is debugged block 5 and 6, we are moving on to the last, that is 7 block. So when all these are true, then we are moving last to the 7 block when block 7. Else if all these conditions are not there, then it will take a default value. So this is an example of multiple values that are accepted in the switch statement. Then we have the example with the S objects. When we are switching on different S object value, that you are using it to implicitly perform any instance of checks and casting. You are using the following code if S object instance of account, because account is a list that was created earlier. Now you are creating an object of that particular account A. Then I am adding the account name, account value to it, and then I am providing the instance of the contact that is associated with that particular account, and then I am saving that value in C. Then contact is shown, else we are getting the default value. Now you can also replace this with the help of switch statement, because the switch statement can also be used with S objects. So switch on S object when the account is A, then the system.debug account plus A. Then if this is not true, then there will be a null value and system.debug will be null. When else, system.debug is default. You can use one S object type when you are using the one when block. Then we have the do while loops, for loops, while loops. So in do while loops, what happens? The condition is checked afterwards. So the syntax is do code block while then condition. It is similar to Java. The apex do while loop is not checking the boolean condition statement after the first loop is executed. So the code block always runs at once, because it is a little different from Java. Now the example is that the code is providing the output, the numbers 1 to 10 in the when I am debugging it. Every time I have to execute a code in salesforce.com, I used to write down system.debug, which is very much similar to printf command and the scanf command in C programming language. So I am getting the count as 1, that is the integer count is equals to 1. Then I am checking the count of the total number of values, then count is incremented if count of the particular account is less than 1. So this loop will be repeated until the count is less than 1. Then we have the while loop. So the while loop is executing the block of code and the boolean condition also needs to be true. Then you will get the while condition. Then you have the code block. So the while loop first checks the condition. Then after that the loop is executed. So here is an example. The integer count is equals to 1. Then while count is less than equal to 11, then system.debug count, then incremented. So you will check until the value becomes 11. Then we have for loops. So for loop has three different type of ways for its execution. Firstly, the very traditional way of operating the for loop is the init statement, then the exit statement, and then the increment or the decrement operator, and then the code block, and the list or the set of iteration for loop. Now the second is your the list or set iteration for loop. So here in for you are providing the variable and then the list or the set name, then the code block. Then here the value, the variable that is stored, either it must be primitive or it is of the S object type as the list or set. Then we have the last one as the SOQL for loop. Here you are writing the SOQL query along with the variable and then the code block is written. Then or you can also define in the form of variable list and the SOQL query and then the code block. Then we have the different ways for writing down the for loop. This is the very initial way that we used to operate in the different programming languages. So here we have the initialization of the variable, then we have the exit condition, then the code block is then given, and then the increment statement is provided. Then you have to return again and again till you get the last value. So for integer, the last example is given here is for integer I is equals to 0, that is initialized, j is equals to 0, and then I should be less than 10, and then incremented system.debug I plus 1. Then in list or set iteration for loops, here the example which I have taken is the this code will give the output between 1 to 10. So integer, because we are talking about the list, so the list name is my ints. So here in my ints I am saving 1 to 10 values. Then I am getting the integer I for I, integer I my from the list name my ints. Then we are using system.debug to generate those values. Then we have the iterating collections. So this collection is consisting of list or set or different maps. You can easily modify or change the value of the collection elements when you are performing any iteration, and that will cause an error. So we cannot implicitly or directly change the elements numbers, the count, or we cannot remove, we cannot add any elements while I am iterating through the collection that are using those elements. Now when I have to add elements during any iteration, then we are keeping the new elements in a temporary list, or if I'm using a set, then in that set, or if I'm using a map, then in that map. And then We are adding them to the original after the iteration of that particular collection is finished. Then I have to remove elements during iteration. So when to remove elements while iterating a list, we have to create a new list. Then we have to copy the elements, and then I can add the elements I wish to remove to a temporary list, and then I can remove them after finishing the iteration of that particular collection. So the list.remove method is used to perform the removal of the elements from the list from time to time and after the iteration. So when you have to remove any elements while you are performing an iteration of a map or a set, you have to keep the keys you wish to remove in a temporary list. Then after that you can remove them after finishing the iteration of the collections. Now we have the different classes, objects and interfaces. So Apex classes are similar to Java, but there are multiple differences with the Java. You can define, you can instantiate, you can extend a class, and you can also work with the interfaces. Apex class have different versions, different properties, and we can have different class concepts. So when talking about classes, you can create different classes in Java as well as in Apex. So a class is collection of the objects. So here you can create multiple objects. The object are always considered as the instance of the particular class. Then you have the interfaces. So interface is like a class in which none of the methods have been implemented. Then you have the method signature. Body of each of the method is empty, and then you can use an interface. You can Another class can be implementing it. You can provide a full body for all the methods in the interface. Then you have the keywords. You can use the different keywords in the Apex language, that is the final keyword, the instance of, the super, the this, transient, with sharing and without sharing. These all keywords are used with the help of Apex language. Then you have the different annotations. The annotations are used to modify any class or any method that is used, and it is very much related to the Java. So you can use the and at the rate symbol followed by the any keyword that you want to use as an annotation. Then you have classes and casting. Now all data type information is available at the runtime. So Apex language is always enabling the casting. That is, the data type of one class can be assigned to the data type of another class. But if only one class is there and one class is a subclass of the other class, then you can use the casting. You want to convert an object from one data type to another data type. You have the differences between Apex classes and the Java classes. Apex classes are very much similar to the Java classes, but there are certain differences and certain definition differences. So we have class definition creation. Here we are using the class editor to create a class in a Salesforce. Then we have the namespace prefix. So the namespace prefix helps us that we have the different Salesforce application that is using the same namespace prefixes. So this is used to manage the app exchange packages. Now to create the custom object and the field names from the names used by other organization, we have the Apex code versions. Now we have the different classes and triggers that are stored with the different version settings of the Salesforce API. We have the list of custom types and sorting. We can hold objects of different user data types. Then we have list of user defined types that can be easily sorted. We can use custom types in map keys and sys. You can easily add instances for your Apex classes to map and to set the data. Then you have the Apex class definition. In Apex class definition, you are providing the top level classes as well as the inner classes. So the top level classes can be declared as the public class, and the inner classes can be declared as the private class, or you can also declare it as a public class. So these are the access specifiers that are used in the Apex classes. So public class, my outer class, and then you can store certain code of the outer class, then inner class, my inner class. Now when you have to define a specific class, we have to get this access modifier. Then you can have access modifier either as the public or the global public when you are declaring the outer class. Now you do not want any access modifier for declaring any inner class. So the different optional definition modifiers that are used are the virtual, abstract, and many others. Then we have the keyword class followed by the name of the class. We have the different optional extensions also. You can use these type of syntaxes for creating a class or for defining a class, either private, public, or global, then virtual, abstract, with sharing, without sharing. So you need to just write down the class and then the class name, then implement this interface you are providing, the interface name list, then extends the class name. Then you have the body of the class. So the private access modifier is declared for a particular class, that will be used only inside the program, or it will be used locally, and this is basically the default access specifier for any of the inner class. And if you are not specifying any access specifier for the inner class, then it will be considered as the private access specifier. Then we have the public access modifier, that is declaring the class is visible in the application or the namespace. Then I have the different access specifier, that is global access modifier. So this global access modifier is known by the Apex code everywhere. So all the classes that is containing methods defined with the web service keyword must be declared as a global. Then if a method or an inner class is declared as a global, then outer top class must also be declared as a global class. Then we have the with sharing and without sharing keyword, that is specifying the sharing mode of this particular class. So the virtual definition modifier, that is declaring class allows the extension or override it. You cannot override any method with the override keyword, but you can declare it as a virtual class. Now we have the abstract. So the different modifier that is declared, that class contain abstract methods. We can have the signature declared for it, and then we can have no body for that abstract method that is declared. Then we have the class variables. So when I have to declare a class variable, we have to follow the following things, that is there the class variables are optional, that is the modifiers such as they can have the public modifier, final, or the static modifier. Then we have the required field, that is the data types of the variable is the required field. Then we have the name of the variable should always be there. Then we can provide the value of the variable, or we cannot provide the value of the variable, that is an optional part. So this is the syntax for defining any variable. Either the access modifier is public, private, protected, global. Then final is the keyword, then static, then data type, and then the variable name, and if you want to assign any value, then equals to value. So private, static, final, and then integer, because the data type is integer and the name of it is my int. Then private, final, integer, I is assigned as value 1. Then we have different class methods. So when I have to define a method, we have to specify the following things. First is the access modifiers. So these are optional whether I have to give the public access modifier or the protected access modifier. Then I have the required field, that is the data of the variable that needs to be returned by the method. Then I have the required field, a list of input parameters for the method that you can separate by commas. You can also have to give the data type for these values, and that should be enclosed inside the parenthesis. So you can have 32 input parameters inside a parenthesis. Then you have a required field, then body of the method are declared inside the braces, and all the code of the method including any of the local variable declaration is also contained here. Now the syntax is public, private, protected, global, override, static, data type, method name, and then the input values inside the parenthesis. Here you can use the override methods to override when you are talking only with respect to the classes that has been defined as the virtual class or the abstract class that is not having any body. Public, so here example is public static integer, and then the method get int, and then you are returning the value return my int. Now when talking about Java, the return values can be run as a statement if their results are not assigned to any other variable. So in user defined methods, you cannot be using anywhere the system methods are used. You can be recursive. It can have side effects such as DML insert statements that initialize the S object record IDs, then can also refer themselves or to methods defined later in the same class or anonymous block. Then Apex parses methods in two phases, so forward declaration are always not needed. You can also be polymorphic, that is a method named example can be implemented into different ways with a single integer parameter and one with two integer parameters. So it is depending on whether the method is called with one or two integers. So you can also have the apex parsers that is correcting the selecting the appropriate implementation, and if the parser is unable to find the exact match, then it is using an appropriate match using the type coercion rules. Then we have methods with void return, whether you do not need to return any value. So here the void return is typically invoked. So system.debug, here is a note for the log. Now it can have statement where the return values are run as a statement if their results aren't assigned to another variable. So this is the rule same as in Java. Now we have the passing methods arguments by values. Now in Apex, all primitive data type arguments such as the integer value or the string values can be passed into the methods by value. Means you can perform any changes to the arguments that are existing within the scope of the method, and when the method is returning the changes are lost in the arguments. Then we have the non-primitive data type arguments that are the objects. As objects are also passed into the methods by references. When the method returns, the passed in argument still references the same object as before the method call. Now within the method, the difference can't be changed to any point to another object, but the values of the object field can be changed. The object cannot be changed, but their fields can be changed. So we have the different example of passing primitive and non-primitive data type arguments into the methods. So this is the example of passing primitive data type arguments. So firstly, I have declared the class as the public class so that it can be easily accessed from anywhere, and then the class name is provided. Then I have taken an example. Then I have created a void. The return type of that particular method is declared as void debug status message, and then the original value, that is MSG, is stored in the string type, and then value of the message variable will not change. It will be same as the original value, the old value. that is system.assert equals message original value. Then I have the public static void process string, that is a string type of value is stored, and then the modified value is stored in that s integer, sorry, s variable, that is declared as the string type of variable. Then when I am using the passing non-primitive data type arguments, this will show a list argument that is passed by reference in the reference method and that is modified. Then it is used to show in the reference new method, and the list argument cannot be changed to any point to another list object. Firstly, we are using the create temperature history method, that is creating a variable, and then fill me, that is a list of integers, and then it is passed to the method. The call method fills this list with integer variables representing the rounded temperature values. When the method returns an assert statement, verifies the contents of the original list variable that is changed, and now it is containing different values. Now the second example is taking a second list variable called create me, and then we are passing it to another method, and then the called method assigns the passed in argument to a newly created list that contains new integer values. Now when the method returns, the original create me variable doesn't point to the new list, but it will point to the original list that is already there and which is an empty value. Now the assert statement verifies that the create me does not contain any value. So here I have declared the class as public, and this is an example of non-primitive data type. So the class name is pass non-primitive type example. Then I have created the method create temperature history as the static method, and the return type is a void return type. Then a list fill me is used, that is integer type. Then new list is created, that is the new list name is fill me, and then reference is provided for that fill me. So here the list is modified and then you can store the values. Then system.assert equal will be giving the size, new size of the values that are being inserted, that is 5. Then create me is checked, and then it will tell whether the new list is created or not. Then we have to references create reference new create me. Then we have the system dot assert equals, then it is create me dot size. Now because it is containing no values, it is returned to the original values, so the size will be 0. Here again the references are there for the list of integer m, and then we are getting the rounded temperatures and adding these values to the list that was created as the create me list. Then 5 different temperature values are stored in this, that is 55, 59, 62, 60, 63. Now we have to use the constructor. So what happens, how we get a constructor is always created or invoked whenever an object is created from a class. So you do not need to call the constructor, you cannot invoke, the constructor is invoked automatically. So if a class is not having any user defined constructor, so default and new argument public constructor is used. So for using the constructor, we have, it should have a similar name to the method name, and it is different from the method definition. So when you are writing down the constructor for a class, you are using the new keyword so that you can easily instantiate any object for that particular class. So I have declared the class as public class, the test object is there, then there you are providing no parameters inside the constructor, simply calling the public test object, and then you can write multiple codes after this. So a new object of this type will be created and you will get the test object my test. Then you can easily create you can create the instance of that particular object. So in Apex language, a constructor can be easily overloaded and we can have one or more than one constructor for any class. You can have different parameters for every constructors. So we can also have arguments in the constructor or we cannot have the arguments in the constructor. So you can also represent it as a single integer argument. So the syntax is public class test object 2, then private static final integer, then the default size is given, then the integer size is given, and then the constructor is formed that is having no argument, that is public test object 2. Then the default size is given. Then if I want to create a constructor with one argument, then I am providing the argument inside the test object 2, that is integer object size, and the size will be declared in the object size. Now I have the new objects that can be instantiated with the following help, that is the test object 2 is containing object 1 as well as object 2. Two different type of objects are created. One is having the argument and the other is not having any of the arguments in the parenthesis. So now whenever you are creating any of the constructor for the particular class, so for every constructor you will have a different argument list. So this is the way of representing, that is the public class leads. First there is no argument constructor, then we have public leads. A constructor can have one argument, then public leads boolean call, then public leads string email boolean call. So the constructor is having the same argument but they are not in the same order. So it is taking the boolean value also, it is taking the string value also. So when you are defining any new class, you need to define a new data type for every class. So you can use the class name in any place and you can use the other data types names as well, such as the string data type, boolean data type, or the count data type. Now if you want to define any variable whose type is a class, so any object you assign to it must be an instance of that class or a subclass. Now we have the different access modifiers that are supported by the Apex language. So Apex language is allowing us to use the different access modifiers, that is the private, protected, public, and global access modifiers. So whenever you have to define any method and variables, you can use any of these access modifiers. So while you are passing any trigger, using any trigger, and anonymous blocks can also use these access modifiers. So they aren't useful in the smaller portions of Apex. So for declaring a method a global, any of the anonymous block you need doesn't enable you to call it from the outside of that particular code. So now the interface method cannot have any of the access modifiers, they are always declared as global. Now a method or a variable is visible to the Apex code within the class itself which has created it. Now a specific method or a variable or a public, in order to be available to other classes, are in the same application namespace. You can easily change the level of visibility by using the different access modifiers, that is the private access modifier. This private access modifier is the default modifier, and that means that the method or variable is accessible only inside the particular class that is in which it is created, that is the Apex class. Now if you do not have any specific access modifier, the method or the variable is private. Then we have the protected access modifier. So this type of access modifier or a method or variable is visible to any of the inner class when you are creating any of the Apex classes. So whenever I am talking about the classes, to extend the Apex class, you can only use the access modifier, for instance methods and then member variables. You can this setting is more permissible than the default setting. Then you have the public access modifier. That means that the method or the variable can easily be accessed by all the apex within the specific package. So all the 2GP managed packages that share a same namespace as public with the @namespace accessible annotation. All the public access modifier in no namespace packages implicitly will render the apex code. The public access modifier is not same as compared to the Java. Now, if you want to make anything public, you need a global access modifier here in Apex. So the public access modifier is used inside the package only. Then we have the different method or variables that can be used by Apex code, that is can have the different access to the class, not only to the Apex code in the same application. This access modifier can be used by any of the method that can reference outside of the application as well. Now, when to use the private, protected, public or global access modifiers, you can use the keyword private, protected, public or global for accessing the class as the public class. Now we have the static instance method variables and initialization code. So you can have multiple static methods and variables and also their initialization code. So the Apex classes cannot be any static class, but you can also have the instant method, the member variables that can have the static classes and that can be declared as local variables also, and then cannot support any modifiers. So there are certain characteristics of static methods, variables and initialization code. So they are already associated with the class. They are only allowed inside the only on the outer classes. Now they are initialized only when a class is loaded. They are not transmitted, they are not platform independent. Then they cannot be transferred as a part of a view state from the visual force page. You need to develop it. You need to use the instant method variables for these characteristics. So you can, they are easily associated with a particular object. They do not have any definition modifier. They can have every object that can be inside the class. They all can be instantiated. And then we have the local variables. So the local variables are associated with the block of code in which they are declared, and then they can be initialized before they are used inside the program. Now this is the code that is showing the usage, that is you need to declare it boolean because whether it is true. If the condition is true, then it will take the value of the integer, that is the local variable is assigned as 10. Then you have the different static method and variables. So you can use different static methods and variables only with the outer class. The inner class does not have any static method or variables. So a static variable will not be having any of the instance of the class as it is declared as static. So whenever an object is being created inside a class, so all the static member variables are in the class are initialized and all the static initialization are also executed. So these are handled in order in which they are appearing in the class. So a static method is always used as a utility method and it does not depend on the value of an instance variable member variable. Now because we are having a static method that will be associated with the class, so it can access the instant member variable values of its class. So a static variable is static when within the scope of the Apex class or the transaction. It cannot be static all over the server or inside the whole organization. The value of the static variable will be persisting within the single transaction, and you can reset the values inside the transaction boundaries. So we can also store the shared values inside the instances of a class. So you have to use the static variable. Now we have the code that is declared as the public class B, public static boolean first run is equals to true. Then a trigger will be fired that is using this class, and that will use to first run the trigger. So trigger T1 is created on account, and then before delete, and then after delete, and after undelete. All the values should be generated with the help of this trigger. If trigger is before, then I'm applying two conditions of if before is before and is delete, and then if p dot first run, that is the class name, so the trigger will get the old value, and then it will add the error message, that is before account delete error. So this message will be displayed, and then after that the first run will be false. Now a static variable, whenever defined inside a trigger, it will not contain any of the value for the triggers, that is before and after, and within it will contain only within the same transaction. It will not be easily accessible after the transaction is being finished. So a class static variable, it cannot be accessed through any of the instance of that particular class. So if I have declared a static variable and my class is an instance of the my class uh, value, so you can easily access the static variable by simply calling with the help of the my class instance. So this will give an error. We can directly refer to the static identifiers by our own class. We do not need to create a method, or we do not need to create an instance. Then we have the local variables that are evaluated before the class names. And then if the local variable is similarly having the same name as the class, the local variable is hiding the method and the variables on the class for the same name. So this is the code. Now we have to use instance method and variables. So instance method and members variables are used by a instance of a class or an object. So instance member variable is declared inside a class, but it cannot be declared within a method. So the instance method are usually used by the instance member variables to affect the behavior of the method. Now you have the class that collects the two-dimensional points and plot them on a graph. So you have to use the different member variables. You have to use the public access specifier because it will be accessible to everyone inside the Apex package. So I have declared the class as public class, that is public class plotter. Then I have to use the inner class. So the inner class will contain the point that is containing the double value of x and the double value of y. Then I can also store this value in double x and double y. And then I can access the value of this x and y with the help of this keyword. I can also get the x coordinate, and I have to provide the data type, and then it will return the x value. I can also get the y coordinate, it will get the y value, return the y value. Then I have the different list that is pointing, and it will be created, new list is created of name points, and then the plot is being declared here for x-axis as well as the y-axis. So data type is double for both x and y-axis. Now I have to add a new value to the x and y-axis. So I am simply calling the add method for that particular list, that is points dot add new point x comma y. Now we have the different method, that is the taking the list of the points and then I am using the rendered keyword for it. Thank you. That is all for today. In next lecture, I will be explaining you the different lightning framework and all.